Hello, everyone. Welcome back to episode 3 of my home-based business chat podcast. It's a video podcast. It's not just a podcast. It's a playlist on YouTube at this point, but I think you'll be able to get this on YouTube Music in the app very soon, if not already. So if you have the YouTube Music app, you can go check it out over there to see if you could stream it that way. And that's really going to be when YouTube gets around to doing that. But they're doing it for podcasts on YouTube now, so it should be available soon. So what we've been doing, and let me introduce myself. My name is Kara Buntin, and I've been a home-based business owner for the past 24 years. And first I was selling wedding cakes, like custom wedding cakes offline. Has it been 24 years? Yes, 24 years. So I was selling custom wedding cakes. I had a home-based bakery and it was inspected and licensed by the state. I had the health inspector come to my kitchen, and you can do that if you're only selling bakery goods. As soon as you start selling meats, and we had a whole conversation about that term. But yeah, if you see my Tuesday lives on YouTube, then you'll remember the meats conversation. But if you're selling anything that's baked like that or catering kind of things, then you have to have a licensed commercial kitchen. But I was able to have the state come to my kitchen and license me and inspect my kitchen. Literally the health inspector inspected my kitchen. Now I had conversations with them while they did that, and they're like, yeah, home kitchens are like the least of our worries, but I was still able to do that. And so I was able to have a home-based business. The reason that I bring that up is because what we're talking about today is chapter 3 in this book that I wrote in 2010 for home-based business owners, with some basic common sense, what I thought was common sense, basic common sense tips about running a home-based business, things to keep in mind. And the chapter that we're doing today is chapter 3, called If You Want to Be in Business, Be Businesslike. I just think that makes sense, right? But the problem is that when you have a home-based business, you can run into obstacles that you don't when you have a storefront. And this could be people wanting to come to your house to pick things up. When I was doing wedding cakes, I had to have consults and I had to rent an office. I did at one point have people come to my house, but it was too disruptive as my kids got older, because my husband was able to take them out to the park or whatever at one point. But then when they're older, they don't want to do that. So I rented an office to have a consult space. So there was an extra expense there. There are things that come up when you have a home-based business that you have to adjust for. And the main thing is if you have a family. Now, if you live by yourself, and most of us don't have a home-based business because we live by ourselves, a lot of people will start a home-based business to spend more time with our families. And that's the reason that I did it. I wanted to be home with my kids. But, you can't have both. You can't have a full-time home-based business and 100% spend more time with your family unless you have a partner who's willing to pick up the slack on the family time side of it, because it's just not realistic. For example, my husband, when I started my business, I told him, you're going to have to be the weekend guy. You're the weekend parent. If they have a karate class, you're taking them there. If you want to go visit your parents, do that. And he tended to do that so that grandma could watch them, I think. But, it doesn't matter, because they weren't at home where I had to attend to everything. And if you are home and you have kids, you will be attending to everything regardless of whether your spouse is there or not. So it's really hard to have young children, especially, and have a full-time home-based business, but you can still have a home-based business that you're not spending 80 hours a week on. And generally, when you have a home-based business, you're putting more time into it than you would if you worked for someone else. That's just how it ends up. So don't kid yourself and say, I'll just have an office with a door and I'll close that door at the end of the day. It doesn't work like that. And if you do have kids, that makes it 10 times harder. So just be honest with yourself and the expectations that you have. But you do have to present yourself in a business-like way regardless if you have a home-based business, because if you don't, people won't take you seriously and you're going to get taken advantage of. So let's go through this chapter, because the first section is called Home Sweet Office. And that's basically what I was just saying. It's like, because you're a home-based business, people don't tend to respect that and they don't take you as seriously. If you have a storefront, they know that that's your address and that's the business. If you're just coming to your house to talk about whatever, that gives it a little less legitimacy in most people's eyes. And I remember when I had my office, I did have to pay, I rented an office to do wedding cake consults. So I was there for 4 hours once a week when I did tastings. So, I was paying rent just for that. But it's because it gives people a little more security and a feeling of legitimacy, whether that's, it's just a perceived thing, whether it is or not. And this story will show that. But I was there a short time each week, but for me, it was worth it because I didn't have to make my family interrupt their schedule. It made customers feel like I was a little more professional because I actually had a quote unquote office and they weren't coming to my house. And I did have a couple once who came and the bride told me, oh, I went to another consult and I knew the baker that she was talking about. And she also had a home-based business. And this bride said, well, I went to that consult and I pulled up and I saw that it was someone's house and I just drove away because I'm not going to work with someone who works out of their home. And I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, you're in an office now, but do you see a kitchen? Do you see any baking supplies here? I work out of my home. Of course, I didn't say that, right? But it's perception, and the way that people perceive you is going to be based on how you present yourself. So if you do have a home-based business where you have to meet clients, it would be worth it either to rent an office somewhere, and you can do that. I actually found a florist who had the same situation as I did. He didn't want to bring customers to his house for a consult, so we rented this together. We just split the rent, and it was just a little office, strip mall kind of situation. You can find places like that. But you can also just go meet people at Starbucks or Panera. There are enough cafes now where you can go and people expect people to be doing work there. You can't walk into one of the coffee shops and not have people there with computers. So that's not an unusual situation. For me, it would have been a little awkward doing that since I was bringing cake samples and they would have been taking cake samples out in a cafe and that's a little weird. So I went the office route. But if you don't want to spend the money for an office for consults, then you should definitely consider taking people off site, which means your home. And it's also just a safety issue, right? You don't want to have a lot of strangers coming to your house. So as just for many, many reasons, it's a better choice to have people meet you somewhere else where you can have kind of neutral territory and you can talk about whatever you need to talk about. Now, if your business is completely online, that's not an issue. But you might still run into people who say, can I buy this and then come to your house to pick it up? Can I pick it up in person? And you have to decide for yourself whether you want to do that. And that's your decision. You can say no. I don't like it when people come to my house. So I generally will say, I kind of feel them out. It's like maybe, maybe not. I'll do a little Facebook creeping and kind of look at them. And yeah, I'm profiling people, right? So I'm like, okay, do you look like a creep? I don't know. And it's generally people who have emailed me and they've either bought from me before or whatever. So I kind of know them. But if I don't feel like I want people coming to my house, I'll just say no and I'll mail them the thing. And the way that gas prices are these days, it's kind of easy to get out of that. Because if someone lives a distance away from you, you can say, well, you can, but it's going to cost just as much in gas to come pick it up and I can mail it tomorrow. And most people just say, oh, okay, just mail it because it saves them time and the gas money. But yeah, you just have to make that decision for yourself. And as far as a safety issue goes, it's better not to have people who you don't know coming to your house, especially if they're coming inside. That's just a little weird these days. But it's up to you. And you can always decide to deliver things, but I would charge a delivery fee for that depending on how far you have to go, But the main point of this is that you have to present your business as a business. And like I said, if you're going to deliver things, then charge a delivery fee because that's what businesses do. So you're not there to do them a favor. You're there to be a business. And that's hard for a lot of people to kind of wrap your head around if you're working from home because the lines get very muddy. So just think about how you would handle those kinds of situations and write it down and say, these are my policies. And then if someone asks a question and you're like, no, you say, well, my policies aren't that. So you just have to approach those things on a case-by-case basis, but you do need to think about how you would approach them so that you don't have to think on your feet if someone asks, right? So that's the first thing. And the second part of this is the section called Who is the Business? And that's basically the same kind of thing. It's like, are you the business or is the business the business? And people will treat you exactly how you let them treat you. And I know that's a kind of a trite old statement, but I've had people who, and I mentioned this in here, I'm, my persona online on my website for cakes is very professional. When I put my website together, I'm not on my website posting pictures of my kids and pictures of my family trips and, talking about what I ate for breakfast and that kind of stuff. That's not my business. That's my personal social media stuff, which I don't post my breakfast anyway, but you get the point that when you're setting up a business website, and I think Pinterest is a good example for this because I have a business Pinterest account and I have a personal Pinterest account, which I don't use very much. But in my business Pinterest account, it's about my business. It's not me saving recipes and it's not me saving things that I'd like to wear because God knows I don't do that. But that's not the kind of thing that I want people to come to my business website and see or to my business social media and see. Most people don't know a whole lot about me. They might know some of the basics and they might know like a couple things that I like. For instance, the Zelda games. Yes, please. But I would challenge most of you to really tell me what I'm like as a person. And I think, authentically, yes, I am what you see here, right? I'm going to tell you the way it is, but I'm going to be nice about it. But every now and then I had a cake customer who said, you are completely not what I expected when I was on your website. And that's because when you get people in the consult room and they say, oh, I love this. And you're like, oh, I do too. And they would say, what? I wouldn't have guessed that from your website. And I was like, well, that's because the website isn't about me. It's about the business. So you have to decide how much of you're going to share with people and treat your business like a business. And it's not about you, it's about your business. And I tell people this in their Etsy shops. This is a good example also, that when you have your about section in your Etsy shop, that's about the business. It's not about you. And yeah, you can write a little bit about yourself just to explain your qualifications. But that about section on your Etsy shop should be telling people why they should buy from your business, not about why you like making what you make. So it's kind of another part of that mental separation that you have to have, and people just don't think about it, but it's very important. It's important to keep it professional. And I have that in capital letters here. Keep it professional. Okay. Now, let me see. Online basics. And remember, this was written in 2010. So a lot of people did not even have a website back then. So I did, but a lot of people didn't, or they had very basic websites. And I'm just going to read this. When you have a storefront, your store window is your identifying presence to people. They can usually tell by looking at the front window whether they want to go inside, whether it's inviting, or whether they think they'd be better off passing it by. If you don't have a storefront, you still need an identifier, and that becomes your website. Okay, so and in the case of Etsy, it's your Etsy shop. And you have to understand that for people to take you seriously as a business, you have to have a business presence online. And that's one reason why I tell people get a website. And I say that all the time, because when you have an Etsy shop, that's fine. But unless you have a website, people really don't take you as seriously as if you only sell on a platform and you have a little shop set up. And it's just, again, it's a perception thing. If you have, let's say that you go to an Etsy shop and it looks kind of janky, and you go to the social media section, there's no information there. They don't have any social media accounts that you can find. There's really no information about the shop or the owner or anything. And it makes you nervous. It makes you think, is this really a real business, or who am I buying from? But if you go to an Etsy shop, and even if it looks a little janky, if you go down and there is social media there, or if it looks really good, okay, and you go down and there's social media links, there's Facebook page, there's an Instagram account, there is a website, there's social media, and it's all very established and it's consistent, and you can see that they've been online for a long time, and there's a profile of the owner, and there's an about section filled out. All of that information makes people trust you more immediately. Even if they haven't bought anything from you, even if they don't see any reviews, that information there makes them trust you more because it's just a perception thing. So it's important to make sure that your online presence overall is pretty well rounded and it's consistent. And again, it's the kind of thing that if you have your personal page is the same as your business page, and like I've followed accounts on Instagram before where I've unfollowed because I thought I was following a cake account because they posted about their cakes and their business. And then all of a sudden it's like lots of pictures of their kids' birthdays and selfies of them with the duck face and all, I don't need to see that. And that's not what I followed your business for. So I just unfollow that. And it's a perception thing, yes, because they might make the best cakes in the world, but that's not what people need to see if they're looking up your business, okay? So make sure that you have, and this kind of goes along with recently, Google has been doing a real focus on what they refer to as EEAT in order to rank websites and to give websites authority and to say whether this website is trustworthy and that kind of thing. EEAT stands for expertise, experience, authority, and trustworthiness, okay? Or authoritativeness or authority. But E is expertise, means that you know what you're talking about. Experience means that you have experience actually doing that thing. And you can have expertise without experience. I could be the world's biggest expert on outer space, but I've never gone into space, right? But as soon as I get launched to the moon, then I have experience. So expertise, experience aren't exactly the same thing. They're related, but it's slightly different. Then authoritativeness or authority means that other people link to your site or you have a lot of followers online and people kind of look to you as someone who has experience in that field. Sorry about that. Mr. Spam was calling me again. Okay, so authority is kind of how you're perceived by other people in your area, like in your niche. And for Google, that means looking at other sites that have linked to your site and that kind of thing to see whether your site is something that people are linking to show that they think that you're an authority in the space. The T is trustworthiness. Trustworthiness is really important in retail, especially if you're an online seller, because people aren't going to buy from you if they don't think that you're trustworthy. So for that, it would be things like reviews and how long you've been around. For Google, if your website has been online for a long time, that gives it a little more trustworthiness because it shows that you're not kind of a flash in the pan. You're not there to just take people's money and run, and that you're probably going to stay there for a while. So, the interesting thing about that is that it's kind of the same thing that customers use when they're actually looking at stores to buy from on Etsy or on your website or whatever. And it's something that you do subconsciously, but you do look, and the people that have an online presence and seem to have a lot of followers and seem to have a lot of interaction and have been online for longer, they seem to be more trustworthy. They have more experience. They're looked at as more of an authority. And that's just from customers. That's not from Google. So you do have to think about how you're presenting yourself online and make sure that it's a well-rounded profile so that you actually do link your social media to each other and people can find you and kind of make that judgment about whether they trust you in order to buy from you. All right, now I found the next section in here, there's a few other things, but this says, what about offline? And then, the interesting thing about this is it's talking about answering the phone. And, this was 2010 that I wrote this book, but this is what I found amusing when I was first looking at this, because I was talking about how to answer the phone, and it's like specifics about getting caller ID and having a second phone line if you can't put a business line in your house and that kind of stuff. But, the one thing that I found amusing is, let me see. I think I skipped past it, but it was basically about how quickly you should return messages. And this is something that people still argue about. So even if it's not specifically about answering the phone, we know that Etsy has put this star seller criteria in place that they want you to answer the first message that someone sends you within 24 hours. And guess what I say in this book in 2010? The one thing that I'll stress is that you need to return all calls as soon as possible, okay? I've returned calls within 24 hours, which I thought was a long time, and I've had people say, thanks for calling back so fast. Now, at the time, I actually asked someone I'm curious because I think that waiting 24 hours for me is a long time. If I call someone, I want a quicker response than that, even if I'm, rationally thinking, well, they might take a day. But I've had people tell me so many times that people just don't answer messages. And I actually, this is an interesting story that brings that to mind. When I was planning my wedding, and this was like way back in the 90s, right? When I was planning my wedding, I called a bunch of caterers and only one of them called me back. And I thought, well, if they don't want my business, that's fine. And so I hired this woman and she was great and it was perfect. So a year later, I got a call from a caterer who said, I have this message on my desk and it says that you're planning a wedding. And I said, yeah, for last year. And he looked at the message and just started laughing like it was really funny. And I said, that's pretty sad. I said, if your desk is that messy and you're that unorganized, why is anyone going to hire you? Or if they do hire you, they're not going to be happy, right? So just make sure that you're answering messages promptly. And I think 24 hours is too long. So if you have a cell phone with you and you have a messaging app from Etsy, like just sign up to have Etsy send you a little alert whenever someone sends you a message. I don't have alerts for favorites. I don't have alerts for orders. I just have an alert set up so that I will get pinged when somebody sends me a message. And I don't drop everything and answer it right then necessarily, but I know that it's something I need to pay attention to. And I don't care if it's the weekend because, again, my kids are old and out of the house. So I'm just kind of messing around and I can answer a message. I don't care. And honestly, if you answer messages quickly, people think you're more professional. Okay, if you let people hang and just let them wait all weekend, then they've probably moved on to another shop. So it's up to you how you do that. And you can set up auto response messages to take care of the star seller criteria, which I'm really not that concerned about. But in 2010, I was saying you need to answer all messages within 24 hours, and that's just good business. So this has nothing to do with Etsy. This is just being a good business person. And yeah, you might want to take the weekends off, so set up the little auto response, but I would say to answer the messages. So there you go. And you might disagree with me. Let me know in the comments if you disagree with me. I don't care if you disagree. You can, run your business the way that you want. But it's important to present yourself as a business, and businesses answer messages if people think that they're a good business. I'm sure that we can all think of some bad businesses who have not answered our messages. And, when people complain about Etsy not answering messages, and then they turn around and say, I don't answer messages until I feel like it. Well, you have nothing to complain about. But that's kind of off topic. The last section in here is called How to Handle Your Friends and Family. Now, I talked about this last week, okay? But handling your friends and family, once you do have a business set up and going, is different from your friends and family being your customers. Because your friends and family you might have friends who are super supportive and who respect your time and who don't just drop by to chat in the middle of the day. But then again, you might have friends and family who think, okay, she's at home, so I'll just go over and hang out. And that's not good. And I've had people actually have to put signs on their doors that say working hours, go away, and it's awkward, and you're going to make some people mad if they think that they can take advantage of you. But you have to set limits. And again, this goes back to what I was talking about with friends and family, is just setting limits. And you have to be able to say no. The word no will set you free. You are not required to answer the door. And just disconnect your doorbell if you have somebody who's a doorbell ringer, right? Put headphones on if you have someone who's going to stand there and knock for an hour. And I know that those people do exist because there are people in the world who just live for themselves and they don't have any idea of boundaries. So you need to create those boundaries by telling them, I am working between this time and I cannot talk to you then. Don't call me unless someone's bleeding or dead, and just give me some time to get my work done. Because a lot of the time, if you don't treat your business like a business, no one else will either. And that's not a lot of the time. It's like any time. If you don't treat your business like a business, no one else will either. Learn to say no. I mean, if you take nothing away from this little chat other than those two things, then you'll be okay. You have to treat your business like a business, and you need to make sure that others do too. And the people who are the least likely to do that are your friends and family who think, oh, she's having fun. She's just working at home. I can just go over and hang out. No, set limits. And that's when people say, the door to the office is closed, and that means that I'm not available. Well, that works sometimes, but sometimes it doesn't. But again, if you're at your house and someone is coming over and pounding on your door because they think that you should drop everything and entertain them, then you need to have a talk with that person. And like I said, get the headphones. There's noise canceling headphones now. You can put those on and you won't even hear them. So that's a thing. But that could be the hardest part, is the friends and family thing. And again, if your family consists of a lot of small children, young kids who need your attention, at a different level than older kids do, then yes, you should be flexible. And there's a really good book called, it's a book, but she's done a series of books called Time Management from the Inside Out. I want to say her name is Rhonda something, but you can look it up, Time Management from the Inside Out. And I think the link is in the description of this video because it's such a good book. And it basically divides people up into groups, like you're the manager, you're this, you're that. And she called the parents of young children or parents of kids emergency managers or emergency responders, okay? Because you can't really plan your day because you don't know what's going to happen. So that was an entirely different category. It wasn't even someone who does this. If you have no consistency because you are responsible for other people who are small, then it's very difficult to plan your day. And you just have to understand that that might be what your life is at this moment, and it is going to change. The first time I went to help I was room mother for the 4th grade or something. I went in to help for the Christmas party. And the amount of help that I had to give them was so minimal, it was shocking to me because I think there's a big change between, I don't know if this was 2nd or 3rd grade or kindergarten or whatever. There's a big difference in the amount of help that your kids need for things between when they're 5 years old and when they're 9 years old. So this time of your life, if you have young kids, it might just not be possible to divide your business and your family as clearly and as far as your time goes. But when they get a little older and they don't need your help for every single thing, you will be able to do that. So get your plan in place, but just have it be responsive to your life. Again, this is about making your business fit into your life and not vice versa. And it is nice to have a home-based business when you have kids because you can be flexible. You can give yourself that flexibility. But at the same time, it is limiting. Just be aware of that. And you have to handle your friends and family. So don't be afraid to say no. Treat your business like a business or no one else will. And that's really about it. So if you have any questions or comments, post them. But this was kind of fun to talk about. And what are we talking about next week? Let me look. Next week, we're going to talk about get it in writing. Oh, this is another good one. And I might actually go ahead and do that now. So you might see this shirt in a couple more podcasts. But let me know how you like this. Give this video a thumbs up, podcast, whatever you want to call it. I will talk to you guys next week, and we'll talk about getting it in writing.